Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and now that my obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community, and a video by Jeff Nippard has just come through my feed. And you know, Jeff is one of those guys I always like to be fair to because he doesn't strike me as a bad guy. I generally like Jeff, and so I looked at this workout, and he's generally science-based, and I really was not impressed with it, not happy with it, and I'm going to give a fair criticism of it. And it has to do with the fact that I think Jeff is stepping a bit out of his wheelhouse into a new area, and he's trying to make it scientific based, but it's really not. And I'll be honest with you. If you're doing slow eccentric reps and calling something scientific based, that's a problem because that really isn't supported by the scientific literature that eccentric loading is particularly effective for hypertrophy. It just the evidence over the years hasn't really shown that to really be the case the way that a lot of people want to say that it is. I mean, at that point, you might as well start saying that flat Earth theory is scientific, right? That's kind of the direction you're going at that point, Jeff, and you need to be realistic about that. You're being extremely bodybuilder, heavy drug use bro at that point. And you need to be aware of that because that's not scientific based. And so let's come over and let's talk about practical experience. I like the fact that he's doing a higher frequency squatting program. I'm a big fan of high frequency squatting. You guys know I have written quite a few high frequency squatting programs. In fact, if you guys recall with Nicola Ella many years ago, natural pro bodybuilder, good friend of mine, who he had stalled like 6 or 7 years ago. He couldn't progress anymore. I helped him with a high frequency squat program, start getting his legs to grow again after he was already a natty pro. He finally broke a 500 squat for the first time in his life, and then recently he finally got to a 550, right, doing a 3-day-a-week squat program, and that's where we got him there. And so I'm a big fan of high-frequency squatting. You guys have seen me do up to 5 or 6 days a week of squatting. So let's get into where the problems are with this. Jeff is a relatively advanced lifter at this point. I don't think anyone's going to call him a novice or an intermediate, are they? Right? Now, his squat numbers are pretty much intermediate numbers, more or less, but not necessarily relative to his body weight. So that's where we get into different point there. But squatting 3 days a week and squatting with any sort of high frequency, anything beyond twice a week, actually even almost beyond once a week to some extent, because I actually squat what I consider low frequency right now. I squat 2 days a week personally. I have a max effort day and I have a dynamic effort and volume day. So when you are going to do relatively high frequency squatting, you start talking 3 days a week or more, you really can't mix modalities in the same workout. So here's my concern. I don't necessarily have a problem with the slow linear progression that he chose. He's using medium and then going up to high reps because he starts with 4, which is moderate reps, and he goes to 5, still moderate, and then he tries to jump to 6. So what he's doing, I believe it's 3 sets of 4, 3 sets of 5, and then 3 sets of 6 over the course of a 3-week wave. And then he adds weight and drops back down to 4 again. That's a slow linear progression. So he's starting with medium reps and then working his way up to high reps. So there's nothing wrong with that because higher reps like that can be pretty good for things like squats for hypertrophy on a big exercise like that. And some people are going to say like, well, 6 is high. Yeah, for compound movements, 6 reps is high reps for big exercises. Anyone who does really heavy big exercises and trains in the strength world knows that. That's higher reps, anything over 5. So you're dealing with something like the barbell squat, you start doing that. That's fine. That's actually perfectly reasonable. I see no issue with what he's doing there is the basis of a 3-day-a-week squat program. I look at that and say, hey, great. I don't see any problem there. And again, he talked about he prefers a high bar. Nothing wrong. I'm squatting high bar these days. That's fine. Nothing wrong with high bar squatting. Slightly wider stance, which he's actually doing really what we would call like a medium stance, right? Medium stance. Just outside of shoulder width is kind of a medium stance. And talking about glute activation, quad activation, he's absolutely right on that. You're going to get more quad activation with a slightly wider stance or more glute activation, and you don't see any difference in quad activation. That's what the research shows. And so he's right. He's looked at the data on that. I'm going to agree, saying go just slightly below parallel, which is what he's doing. He's going a little bit below parallel, and that's generally your safest route for overall development. Lowest injury risk to your knees, lowest injury risk to your back. That's actually a good spot to work at. It's great for overall strength and hypertrophy. I see no problems whatsoever with what he's doing on the squat end. I want to make that part clear when I go into my criticisms. All right, that foundation is good. Now, upper lower 6 days a week, I think that's pushing it. You start doing stuff like that, I'd kind of like to see your drug stack, but to each their own. So I do want to point out, though, that upper lower works, though, because you're giving equal time to your lower body versus your upper body, which is what you should be doing unless you're trying to be just an upper body bro. So that part I agree with. Here's where we get into issues. He's doing a ton of eccentric loading and a lot of really high volume after doing these squats and running these through almost a slow linear progression system. That's not going to work with high frequency squatting. I can tell you right now, Jeff, you're gonna start running into problems very, very, very quickly. All these slow eccentrics being added in afterwards on a high frequency squat program. How many weeks you plan on keeping this up? I don't expect particularly phenomenal results for him on this. I really don't. I don't expect it to give him the results that he thinks it's going to give him. I think it's going to be difficult. I think it's going to be very difficult, particularly doing drop sets and tons of really slow eccentric movements for both the quads and the hamstrings. Come on. His Romanian deadlifts that he does as a second exercise, complete waste of time. Complete and utter waste of time. All right, you're squatting 315 for work sets. Do you honestly think 135-pound partial Romanian deadlifts are going to do anything for your hamstrings? You must have pathetically weak hamstrings if that's any sort of work. He's going back and saying, well, since he's doing the really slow eccentrics, even though the jury's still out on them, the jury's not still out on them. The data has been looked at for 20 plus years. The jury isn't out. The jury says they don't do crap for you. There's no benefit. And when there shows no benefit, when something's been studied for 20 plus years and you're not finding a benefit to it, that's not scientific to say the jury's still out. The jury is saying, there doesn't seem to be any evidence for it. So he's going to do these really slow negatives, but then he goes on to say, and I can use a lighter weight. All right, okay, if you're lifting extremely explosive and fast, a lighter weight you can get away with for muscle fiber recruitment. When you're going slow, the only time negatives have ever shown to equal concentric reps in terms of hypertrophy is when you go heavier. All right, let me state that again. The only time eccentric reps in studies equal concentric reps on hypertrophy. Let's not even get into being better. Even when they equal it, they have to be heavier than your concentric reps. You're using a lightweight for slow eccentrics and then doing a partial. You're skipping the top of the movement, which so you're less glute activation and everything else. That's not going to give you any development. That's a complete waste of time. It's going to make you a little bit sore. It's going to make your hamstrings a little sore. You're going to get no development. At your size and strength level, doing 135-pound ultra-slow Romanian deadlifts, complete waste of time, but it is going to make you sore. He then goes on to do walking lunges with a drop set. Look, for conditioning, that's fine. I don't see a problem with doing that as conditioning work. Maybe even on off days or something as some form of GPP. And it might be pretty good for your quads, but you're mixing that 3 days a week with squats on the same day. So you're doing medium reps, and then you're going to do exhaustion work like that for your quads in the same workouts. You better periodize that. In fact, I'm going to say if you're going to do anything that's going to be general physical preparedness and conditioning like that, that's going to involve your quads, you need to do something that removes the eccentric completely. In other words, that's fine. You need to do some GPP, and walking lunges are just conditioning work. That's what they are. Go push a sled. Go drag a sled. Push a prowler. Do something like that that's not going to have an eccentric component. Because again, you're just going to fatigue yourself and it's going to interfere with your squat workouts. Your squat's your main mass builder here. So then we get over to him doing these leg extensions and we run into the same thing. He is actually doing what we consider an eccentric correctly. He's using both legs to raise it and one leg to lower it. Okay, that will actually stimulate growth, right? That will stimulate growth. Slow eccentrics are the weight that you can lift on the concentric rep doesn't stimulate muscle growth. Right? There's no reason to think that it does. In this case, it will. The research will back that because he's needing both legs. It's a weight that he can't do concentrically with one leg, and he's just doing the weighted negative. Okay. That'll stimulate growth. It's also going to make your quads really sore. So now you're going to have sore hamstrings from the Romanian deadlifts. You're going to have sore quads from the leg extensions doing it this way. And I'm not saying it won't cause some growth. That might be the only way you're going to get leg extensions to be particularly good and not put shear on the knee. That's fine. But you're doing all that eccentric loading. Eccentric loading done that way can equal concentric work for building muscle, right? That's what you're doing. You're actually making it build muscle, which is the only way eccentric work does build muscle generally, at least equal to concentric reps, right? If you want to equal it. Normally, it just adds a little bit of extra workload. So obviously, some eccentric work is better. You're going to be sore. You're squatting 3 days a week, and you're going to walk around sore, and you're going to have to go squat on linear progression. Slow linear progression, but it is linear progression week to week. It's weekly progression on reps, and then you're at every fourth week you're adding weight. You're squatting 3 days a week. You're making yourself unnecessarily sore. Look, if you wanted more quad volume, you could have just added some more squats. I mean, you are only doing like 9 sets of squats a week. I mean, let's be realistic here. That's not high volume squatting. That's medium volume. 8 to 9, 8 to 10 sets. That's kind of baseline squatting, right? That's medium volume. Most people can handle that. Look, if you needed more quad volume, add more sets of squats. Maybe periodize it through the week. Maybe have one really high volume squat day, right? You can have a heavier day with lower volume, and then have a day later in the week like your Friday where you do higher volume, and you could run a concurrent style or undulating periodization. That would be fine. If you need more quad volume, do more squats. Well, why are you messing with this silly shit that's going to make you sore? I don't get it. What's the point? It's not going to equal more growth than a squat would. It's just going to make you sore for the same amount of quad growth you would have been getting from doing a couple extra sets of squats. And then he does his leg curls, which is fine. If you don't have access to a glute ham raise, I can see leg curls because his program thus far is extremely quad dominant. Pretty much lack of hamstring development other than the squat. The squats are probably doing more than those light-ass Romanian deadlifts are for his hamstring. So he needs the extra hamstring work. I'm going to say fine, some leg curls probably be a good idea since he doesn't have access to a glute ham raise device. If he had access to a glute ham raise device, that's what I would throw in at that point. But I just feel like this program is all over the place. He's trying to incorporate too many elements. Too many different performance elements. It's going to make him needlessly sore on a high-frequency squat program. This isn't a good program. I don't recommend that your followers follow this, and you damn sure better not be selling this. Because if you're selling this, Jeff, I like you, but you're conning people because it's kind of a piece of shit. And I'm telling you as someone who is really big on high-frequency squatting programs, I have a lot of experience over the decades with high-frequency squatting. This is kind of junk. And it just is what it is. If you had started with your baseline of the squats and done some different stuff afterwards, I would be on board. If we worked in maybe some sumo deadlifts or better yet, some deficit deadlifts and glute ham raises and things, okay, fine, fair enough. Mixing these modalities the way that you're doing, making yourself needlessly sore, all this focus on stupid-ass eccentric reps, I can't support this. It's garbage. It's complete garbage. And this is directed towards someone who I actually like, and I like most of what he does. I'm just going to call it like it is. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.